Today's show is sponsored by our friends at OrcaCoolers.com. From roto-molded coolers that keep your ice good for days. They have drinkware like the barrel, the football barrel, the shorty, the stein, the teeny, the vino. They have chasers, they have coffee campers and travelers, all sorts of stuff. It's going to keep your drinks cold or hot. You're going to have coolers that will keep ice for days, and they're bear-proof. Go to OrcaCoolers.com/bourbon for 15% off your order. That's OrcaCoolers.com/bourbon. Today's show is also sponsored by our friends at Old Limestone Mixing Water. It is the mixing water of Kentucky bourbon. We are firm believers here at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Drink however you want to drink. You want ice in it? Put ice in it. You want to put some water in it? Put water in it. And if you're going to put water in it, use water that was filtered through limestone in an aquifer that's 130 feet under the ground. Old Limestone's unique Kentucky limestone aquifer produces a rich, velvety, smooth water with hints of calcium and magnesium, which amplify flavors. Yet with no iron at all, you can make bourbon anywhere you want, but 95% of it is made in Kentucky because the water is special. Use Old Limestone water to mix. Take the taste test. Pour a bourbon neat. Sip it. Now add Old Limestone, swirl it, and sip again. Check out Old Limestone at oldlimestone.com, or they're available at a store near you or online.
Bourbon and Beyond this September in Louisville, Kentucky with Bruno Mars, The Killers, Black Keys, Brandy Carlisle, plus Duran Duran, Billy Strings, Black Crowes, the Avett Brothers, Blondie, and so many more. Bourbon and Beyond, September 14th through 17th in Louisville, Kentucky. All passes on sale now for as low as $10 down at bourbonandbeyond.com.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Edwards. Zeke Baker is on assignment, but together we make the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, thank you for making us a part of your day. This is an interesting one, and I know Zeke is going to be really bummed once I tell him he missed this episode, because Zeke likes tequila, Zeke likes mezcal, and this is kind of like that. I am learning a completely new spirit that I've never heard of before. And my friend Luigi Ambrosi is going to share with me about, and don't worry, nobody can see you. This is we only use the video so that we don't talk over each other. We have faces for radio. This is audio only because nobody wants to see this face all the time. But Luigi, you own a brand called Cardenche, and it is, did I say it right?
You did say it right indeed.
And this is Sotol, and it is a clear spirit. It is from Mexico, but it is nothing like tequila or mezcal. It is a completely different plant altogether. It is not agave. I've been doing my research on this prior to you coming on the show, but tell me all about Sotol and just what it is.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I'm always excited to be sharing Sotol with the world and have people learn a little bit more about this sort of almost forgotten category, which is now kind of on the rise again. Sotol is actually a very ancient spirit from Mexico, and it comes from this plant called Dacilirion, also kind of colloquially known as Sotol. That is actually the name of the plant. And
wait, what is the plant again? That's a lot.
Dacilirion. That's the scientific name of the plant.
Now, what kind of a plant is it? We're like,
it's not agave. There's some people who even go as far as to say #not agave on Instagram. But it's from the asparagus family in theory. And it's endemic to northern Mexico. So the majority of Sotol in the world, it grows in the Chihuahuan desert. So in Chihuahua, Durango, Coahuila, trickling even a little bit across the border to southern Texas. And that's sort of the typical area where Sotol grows naturally.
So you said it's from the asparagus family. I mean, is it bigger than your regular asparagus, or is it kind of small, just like asparagus is?
I will say, to avoid any confusion, and if this was a video, I would blow up something on the screen or whatever. But it doesn't look like an asparagus in itself. It looks like a kind of like desertic shrub. I would almost say, imagine a yucca without a trunk. It's a very kind of like thinner leaves compared to other cacti like agave that we might know, much more bushy. However, interestingly enough, when the plant flowers, it flowers, and when agave flowers, it gives out a quiote. Similarly as well, also Sotol, it flowers the quiote, which is, spins up into the air. But in the case of Sotol, the flowering does not actually kill the plant. So what happens is that when we harvest Sotol, and typically wild-grown Sotol, we harvest it between 12 and 15 years before we harvest it. You don't have to kill the whole plant, basically. You just cut it at the base, and the quiote will give life to a new plant on top of what we have already harvested. So you could almost think that it's a more naturally sustainable plant to deal with. And in fact, it's not uncommon to see sort of totem-like structures where you have 2 or 3 Sotol plants growing on top of each other. I actually was in the desert of Chihuahua fairly recently and saw these massive forests of Sotol. It grows really abundantly. Actually, the rancheros that have cattle ranches in Mexico, they are they are asking us, please come to my ranch, get rid of this Sotol. I don't want it, I need free space for grazing. And we happily, get rid of it for them and distill it and make it into what is the Sotol spirit that has been, drank for centuries, I want to say, in Mexico.
Is it one of those things back then, because it's so abundant that they made it into a drink? Because, I mean, it's kind of like, if you think about whiskey in America, it was always rye in the beginning because that's where it was east of the Mississippi. There was a lot of rye and it was just easy to distill it. Is that what they do with Sotol, just because it's there?
Yeah, I would say totally. That's sort of how it all began, I believe, and it's actually interesting that you mentioned rye. I almost, when I'm talking to whiskey aficionados, I like to make a rye comparison because I think that, similarly to rye, it is something that was enjoyed a long time ago and sort of over time only remained something very much enjoyed by, I would say, by experts and by aficionados, but is making a comeback lately. I almost like to say that Sotol is to American spirits what rye is to whiskey. Sotol is to Mexican spirit what rye is to whiskey. In that sense, a little bit of a underdog within its own category, but the people that do love drinking it are very much, aficionados.
Yeah, that's funny. Is it so? So teach me more about this, because we know with Mexican spirits, with mezcal and with tequila, the terroir is so important. Is it same with Sotol? Is it the same kind of idea and the prominence and where it's actually made makes it? I mean, or I know it's a plant, right? So it's in Chihuahua, but what else about the terroir do we need to know?
Actually, the terroir in Sotol, even more so, I would say, more evidently than in tequila and mezcal, it really changes the flavor. I mean, the general flavor profile of Sotol, I would say, has a distinctive earthy and vegetal flavor profile. But depending on the terroir in which the plant grows, that earthiness and herbal vegetal notes change quite a bit. So, when I started learning about Sotol, I realized that how much the terroir affects it. And I decided to look at myself as an explorer of the different terroirs. And in fact, my brand Cardenche, when I created it, was born as a terroir-driven, Sotol. So we have Sotol del Desierto on the market. That's an ensemble of 3 Sotol plants that grow in the desert of Chihuahua. And it has a very dry mineral notes with kind of a sweet cacao aftertaste. And I think that really comes from the plants being in the desert, a lot of sun exposure, but, stressed temperatures, very hot days, very cold nights. This accumulates a lot of starches and sugars in the heart of the plant, which we then use to distill. So that's, mainly what I think gives it this peculiar flavor profile. Whereas Sotol de la Sierra, which is another type of Sotol I make, that comes from the mountains. That's how people refer to the mountains, to the forest of the mountain. They call it Sierra in Mexico. And it's much more kind of woody, this kind of like moist forest pine flavors that really remind you of mountains. Actually, some people, they drink it and they tell me it tastes like a Christmas tree. I don't know if it was just because it was Christmas season when they told me that, but it definitely, that piney flavor emulates it a little bit. So that's, and we're actually constantly looking to learn more about other terroirs. We're actually working on a 3rd one currently. That's going to be Sotol de Pradera, from the prairie of Durango.
It's funny that you say that, though, because as I'm sniffing these, I haven't sipped them yet. So I have both of them. But you are 100% right about the difference between the Sierra and the Deserito, where, it definitely gets a little more earthy in the Sierra. The interesting thing that I kind of know, and I found mezcal to be insanely interesting over tequila, just because of the different types of ways that, each village cooks mezcal. Is it kind of the same thing with Sotol, where there's different flavors of, because you think everybody's like, oh yeah, mezcal is all smoky, and it's not. And I mean, even with these 2 Sotols, there's such a difference in them, right? Like, it's a clear spirit, and people don't really think that clear spirits can have this much variation. And that's what I love about spirits from Mexico, because there is a distinct difference between these 2 here. Do you distill them the same way, or are there different ways you distill it? How do you kind of get those variances in these?
Yeah, I mean, we distill it, obviously there's different ways. You might be familiar with, the ancestral, the artisanal, or the industrial method of distillation. There's not, unique to tequila or mezcal. It's also, distillates have the same sort of ways. We really care, because our whole kind of aim is to showcase the terroir and how it affects the flavor. We right now are only making clear, so non-reposado, non-añejo. We don't want to sort of jeopardize the original flavor by, maybe jeopardize is not the best word to use, but we don't want to compromise the original flavor by, putting it in a barrel and, lending all these very woody notes that they might get. So we really focus on the clear Joven spirit. We do artisanal method of production because we want to, we want to make sure that all the flavors shine through. So what we do is that we harvest the plant with the heart of the plant, the piña, so to speak, and we actually cook it. And this is the peculiarity about Sotol. You cook the piñas underground, in an underground oven. So you dig the oven, you put the piñas inside, you start cooking them, you cover the oven. So instead of putting them in a conical formation and smoking them like it happens a lot with mezcal, this is like direct contact cooking. From there, it goes into fermentation. We personally ferment with natural yeast, airborne, to really emphasize the flavors of its surroundings, and then from there we go into distillation process. We double distill in copper vats. So, copper stills, double distillation.
Got it. So the question I have for you, I mean, and we kind of went right into the spirit. I do like them both. It is kind of, in that same kind of family, even though it is a completely different plant, but it does kind of have similar taste to me than some other clear spirits but it's different too, right? Like hold on, I'm going to say all that again. I don't know.
Oh, no.
No, I mean,
I understand that. I know exactly what you're saying, because I think it's twofold. I think number one is that it does have a sort of a little bit of a smoky profile, because it is, after all, and a lot of times people, they mistake the taste of cooked plant with smoky.
Yeah.
It's very much this cooked plant flavor that sometimes can come across as very smoky, and in the case of Sotol, it's like a little more subtle smokiness compared to mezcal. But I will say, I think that there's also, at least what I found, a sort of mental association whereby people think, this comes from Mexico, it comes from a cactus, it must be, people expect something, and when you expect something in your mind, you sort of want to make it that.
No, and I completely went in with an open mind, and I'm not trying to make, I see similarities to it, but I also see the variance, and even between these two, like I said, and I'm not trying to be a broken record here, there is a distinct profile for each one of them that is nothing like the other one, right? Like the only thing that they really have in common is that they're clear and they were distilled, but like there is a completely different taste between the two of these, and I love that. And I feel like we did things backwards, because normally I would ask, tell me your story and then let's get into your spirit, but we went in right into the spirit, so it's good, right? Because now we're a little lubricated, we've been drinking a little bit. Tell me all about you. How did you get into this? How did you even find Sotol? How did you even make a brand? Like, tell me your story.
Yeah, I definitely, I like to think that it was a sort of serendipitous experience of how I fell into Sotol. I've sort of been in the food and beverage industry. That's kind of my background. I've worked in spirits. I was doing marketing at Campari for Campari Group here in New York, where I'm based currently. Then I sort of moved away from spirits, more in the food business, working for a dairy company.
That's a big change, going from Campari to a dairy company.
Yeah. Well, I guess you gotta follow passions, and I went. I sought an interesting opportunity to build an Italian cheese business in the US, and not differently from Sotol. Every cheese had a denomination of origin, a specific terroir that it came from, a specific profile of it, and a lot of storytelling behind it. Not just the brand, but actually the actual product. So I guess that's something that's always been my passion, storytelling and educating people and bringing to markets things that are sort of new and different and exciting, or at least that I find exciting and hope to transmit the same excitement that I have for them to other people. That's the hope. And whilst doing all this, my sort of passion and side work, let's say, has always been in music. I work with a lot of musicians, produce lots of events. I have a record label, independent, smaller record label. And that's actually how I ended up in Mexico, as I learned through Vice. I want to, shout out Vice for teaching me about the Canto Cardenche, which is this near extinct music genre, typical of North Mexico. And I say near extinct because, as it happens, the younger generations are not, sort of getting into the tradition as much as their forefathers have been in the past. And so I thought it was quite interesting to, go to Mexico and learn about this type of music, see if there was something I could maybe do to help, bring it to the forefront. I do actively work with a lot of Mexican music producers and musicians that I thought I could kind of loop in and help this kind of music shine through.
So what kind of music do you normally do then? I mean, I need your life. This is kind of...
Well, I'll tell you, I like all sorts of interesting, unique music. What I don't like is like the basic tunes. I like, I do all sorts of different, disco music, funk, soul, indie dance, space disco, a lot of different genres. But even just to give you an example, tomorrow night, I'm and that's something actually I ended up going into when I launched our brand of Sotol Cardenche. I tried to organize a lot of musical experiences around the act of drinking my Sotol. And we're organizing a little event tomorrow night here in New York, in the East Village, where I have this Amapiano. I don't know if you're familiar with Amapiano. That's a South African music that's rising to popularity lately. And we're having Sotol and Amapiano tunes. And, to me, drinking a Mexican spirit doesn't mean that you have to constantly be listening to banda music or Canto Cardenche or Mexican music. I think it transcends, the high that you get from Sotol is quite a mystical, deep experience. And you want to, it sort of opens up your heart to let in stimulation from outside. And so I want to work with people that do very unique art, very unique music, and sort of enable people to discover it while enjoying this heart-opening spirit.
I kind of love this about you because it's like you're trying to take all these different things that may be very unique, very interesting, but may not have that mass appeal. And it's not saying that there isn't a market for them, but it's also maybe people just don't know about it and they need to be educated. So I feel like in all these aspects of your life, you're finding these awesome, unique things and you have this personality where you're like, friends, come here. Let me show you. Like, I want you to see this. And I love that about you. Like, it is 30 minutes on the phone with you, and I can already tell how much you love life, my friend, and love experiences and love bringing people together. And that is such a cool thing.
I'm actually going to come to Tennessee soon. I understand you're based in Nashville.
I am.
Well, I'm going to come to Tennessee, Nashville, Memphis. I'm starting to work with blues musicians because similarly to Canto Cardenche, I feel that blues is a type of music that is very much rooted into a location, but has been sort of has lost a lot of its popularity in the recent years, and it's making a little bit of a comeback lately, I think, and has this very deep kind of like it's a music that's very deep, very of the soul, and that's actually what Canto Cardenche is. It's the whole concept behind Canto Cardenche is that you sing as a cathartic act of releasing your deep emotions. It's an a cappella music where people bring their voices to extreme intonations to create a sort of instrumentation. And they say they drink Sotol before singing because it helps them open up their heart and release these deep emotions. And that's also part of why I decided to, call my brand Cardenche, to honor this message of really like letting loose and expressing your deepest feelings. And it just so happens to be that the cardencheros live, which are the singers of Cardenche music, they live in a hub where there's a lot of distilleries making Sotol. And through being there with them, that's actually how I came into contact with Sotol. And, leaving their village, I started, visiting different distilleries and, learning more and more about the product, falling more and more in love, and ultimately deciding to create a brand that could be brought into the world.
So how many distilleries are down there? I mean, are they small? Is it kind of like mezcal where like each village has its own Sotol distillery, or is it something where like there are bigger distilleries down there making Sotol?
There's not really any big distilleries, I would say. Actually, the only big distillery that makes industrial Sotol is in fact in America. But in Mexico, it's all kind of like smaller, more artisanal processes. And as you very well said, it's a sort of like there's different hubs where a village will have, each village will have their own Sotol distillery. And that's also kind of comes from the fact that for many years it was illegal to commercialize Sotol. Because what was happening, because it is produced so close to the US border, during the prohibitions, the bootleggers were smuggling whiskey and Sotol across the borders of Chihuahua into the US.
Oh, really?
They really went for the whiskey, but to smuggle it through. But these distilleries that were making whiskey were also making Sotol, and they were sort of just telling them, "Hey, take these as well. Take this clear spirit, se llama Sotol." Probably the smugglers didn't really care. They're like, "Alcohol, give me." That's sort of how it was in the prohibition. But what happened is that with the crackdown on prohibitions, a lot of these distilleries were either forced to act in secrecy, were closed down, burned down, and so forth. And it was actually deemed illegal to produce Sotol in a law that sort of was never lifted until the mid-90s. So for all these years, Sotol almost just became something that, your local villager makes. You have your jug, you go to the distillery, you fill your jug on a weekly basis, and you keep it in your house. And that was how, for decades, Sotol was enjoyed in northern Mexico. And it's only in the recent years that has been starting to rise to popularity.
So, sorry. So you went down to Mexico, you found this music, you found Cardenche. Tell me then, how did you have this background from Campari, you're doing the cheese thing, you're a record producer, you do everything. How do you then start a Sotol brand?
Well, the cheese thing had to take a backseat. And the Campari thing was long gone, although now I happen to be in the same rooms with a lot of my old colleagues anyway. Actually, the other day, it was a funny moment because I was invited to give a tasting at the New York Public Library that has this beautiful rooftop for its donors and members. And from the rooftop, I could see the offices of Campari in New York. And so I started sending videos to my old boss, being like, guess what? I made it close enough. It's not even been a year that we launched Cardenche, and I'm very happy about the response that I've been getting. There's lots of people that want to put it into cocktails, that want to tell their tenants in their bars and restaurants about it. Actually, just today, I was doing R&D in a bar in near Flatiron in New York. That is actually going to be the first Sotoleria in New York. It's a Sotol dedicated bar.
Oh, wow.
And it's very exciting. It's called Bar Calico.
My favorite thing about New York, so I used to work in New York, and I know, this isn't about me, but I just love how like there's places like the Meatball Shop and Parm, and it's like they just tell exactly what it is. I'm surprised the bar isn't called Sotol. Like,
there was a predating name there, but I think it's almost more unique that is not called Sotoleria, because you go in, you're expecting it, and it's a beautiful, kind of looks like a very elegant library. You're expecting an elevated cocktail experience, and you open this menu with the expectation of having this unique drinking experience, and you have, boom, like 5 or 6 cocktails with Sotol. What the hell is this? And then you have, all the top shelf is only different brands of Sotol, and believe me, we're not many. There's maybe like 6 other brands on the market. So, we're a small category, but very kind of gaining a lot of momentum. I will say there was a celebrity that recently launched, Lenny Kravitz. So that's kind of bringing some buzz.
I mean, he just told everybody, "Are you going to go his way?" And then like other brands went on with him.
Oh, I actually was there before. I was there before him.
I know. I was just making a very, very bad dad joke.
Well, you are a dad drinking Sotol today.
Yes, yes.
So,
but,
I could expect that.
Do you find with Sotol that it's one of those things like that you are going more on-prem first before you're getting other people to like, buy it in a liquor store? Is it one of those things where you have to go do tastings and you really have to kind of drive foot traffic and be out there and have people like, hey, have you tried this before? And then you kind of get them hooked that way.
Definitely, it's an on-premise heavy business at the moment, because that's sort of where, you get your discovery experience. And then, but if there's enough bars in your neighborhood that are stocking Sotol, eventually you're going to want to have it at your house as well. And that's when you go and to your local shop and ask for it, and hopefully they'll have it. But yeah, I mean, definitely it is much more found at bars currently than stores. Although, that's also why I organize a lot of little neighborhood events, because I really want people to get accustomed to drinking it multiple times in a night, and then really getting hooked on it. And once they're hooked on it, then they're gonna continue drinking it. So it is, and I will say, I mean, the people that do end up trying it, and this some feedback that I'm getting from stores where I sell in as well. People end up buying it once, they always come back. On a weekly or every week or every 2 weeks they'll get a bottle. So you really get this loyal base of people, and that's really what I want. That's really what we need. It's not something that the masses are gonna know straight away, but that's sort of, if we think of mezcal 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, it was the same way. And people were even less savvy about Mexican spirits, about plants back then. And I remember myself making the switch, 10 years ago or even more than 10 years ago, from gin to mezcal. And I was like, okay, what is this new thing? Maybe stores only had 2 or 3 brands on their shelves. Now you go to a store, the lamest store will have 6 to 8 brands of mezcal, and there's some places that will have 30. So it's definitely something that is following the same trajectory, starting off in very specialty places and slowly getting recognized by more mainstream locations. Actually, I'm very excited to be featured in a cocktail in a nightclub in Brooklyn. In a very popular nightclub, they're gonna have a cocktail with Sotol, and this sort of not where I initially envisioned someone drinking Sotol, but it's very interesting because you get the experience of drinking it also in a party context and not just in a very sophisticated environment, which I think you need both touch points. I think it's important to know, I'm drinking something special, but it is not something unapproachable. It is very much something that I can go and, have a cocktail and dance all night.
Well,
so that's sort of.
What's the price point of Sotol? I mean, I know it's going to be different for everybody else. And I know, again, Luigi, don't worry. We've been doing this a very, very long time. So you can just say ish, right? Because I know that it's going to be depending on the store, how much they bought, where it is. Like, we know that the prices are different around the country. So just an ish, even if it's like a $10 range.
Yeah, no, I mean, I will say that typically good Sotols, they're found in around $60 to $70 range. That's sort of like the sweet spot of Sotol. Of course, there's some that are more expensive. There's a couple that are less expensive, but the majority of Sotols that you'll find, and at least of good Sotols, artisanal, no additives, not like industrially made with whatever other ingredients inside. These will be ranging in 60 to 70, and that's just the nature of, what it costs for the producer to make it. It's not a cheap drink to make. It doesn't come from, sugar cane, or it comes from a plant that takes 12 to 15 years to grow, that needs to be distilled with great care. So inherently, it's not going to be a cheap process.
Yeah, thankfully there's a lot of it, but it takes a long time for it to grow. So is it one of those things where like you're already thinking ahead when I'm learning a lot about a new spirit, right? There are parallels for me that bring it back to whiskey that makes sense to me. Is it like how you're aging whiskey? Like you're taking these plants, but you're already planting new plants so that in 12 to 15 years, is it something that you're constantly doing to kind of get ahead of production?
Yeah, I think that the majority of Sotol you're going to find on the market right now does come from wild harvested plants, but people are starting already to plant and replant these fields, have been and are doing even more so now as they see the category growing, and as they saw what happened with agave, for example, which, as we know, is experiencing heavy shortages. And that's just because, people maybe they didn't think about it, or were not mindful, or were not expecting to become so popular that one day they would run out of plants. So definitely, the Sotoleros, we want to avoid that from happening. And we truly believe in this category growing. So, couple the fact that we're replanting and the fact that when we harvest the actual Sotol, even if it's wild harvested, we don't have to uproot it. So, we harvest, cut it at the base, and a new plant of Sotol will grow on top of it. So that really favors us a little bit as well.
How many plants does it take to get, a good distillation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it sort of depends on the terroir, actually. So Sotol de la Sierra is a bit more expensive. For example, my Sotol, it actually retails at 90, the one from the Sierra. And why is that? Because the plants in the mountains, they are much smaller, so the yield is lower. And what people typically do with Sotol de la Sierra is that they mix agave, local agave, and Sotol together to get better yields. For me, though, it was very important to make it a 100% Sotol distillate, because I'm trying to explain people that is a different plant than agave. So I would kind of like be, battling against myself if I did a blend. So that's sort of one plant, one bottle kind of deal in that situation. Whereas for Desierto, you can get a few liters from a plant that grows in the desert. So really, it just really depends on where the plant grows. Yeah.
But one plant, one bottle, that's a lot, right? Like it takes a lot to get a pretty good yield then.
And that's why Sotol de la Sierra is a much smaller batch, whereas Sotol del Desierto is more readily available. We're kind of being mindful of the fact that is harder to find in the mountains. So
y'all, this is not something you probably want to do shots of, because this is very, unless you're made of money, because this is a very, 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 there's a lot of care, it sounds like, that goes into this. What do you see kind of going on with your brand? So you started this and it has this big tie to the music, and you're thinking about all these different ways to kind of activate. And I mean, all these different types of activations, right? Like, cause you're almost doing some on-prem stuff. You're doing music stuff. You're doing experiences with the Sotol and music, and really trying to make this brand come alive. What do you see going on with the brand? You're going to come to Tennessee. You're going to, how many states are you in? Where do you see the growth pattern? All that fun stuff.
Yeah. We launched, I would say, in the more kind of obvious states. Perhaps New York, for me, was a very important market. It's our biggest one currently. It's where I live, and it's where there's a lot of bars and restaurant activity going on. So that was and where people are honestly just also very open to new experiences and new products and learning and trying weird, funky things. So, and also heavy cocktail culture. So New York was our first place. Well, after Mexico, we first launched in Mexico City, and we sell in Mexico and in the city, both also in San Miguel de Allende, in Los Cabos, these areas. And then in the US, we launched in New York. Then we went to Miami, Tampa. We do a little bit of Austin, Texas. And we just recently expanded to Colorado. And the reason I also mentioned Tennessee is because our distributor in Colorado has a big presence in Georgia and Tennessee as well. And they have expressed interest in, trickling into those states next. But, I don't want to talk too soon. It's going to come. It's probably going to come up next. But right now we're focusing on where we are.
With your love of music, why you're not here doing Sotol experiences in Nashville, Tennessee, I don't understand why.
I'm going to be there very soon. It's always a process rolling out. You got to sort of solidify a little market before moving on to the next. It's only been, it's been almost a year that we've been on the market. So I think, we're making progress. But I guarantee you within the next 6 months, we're going to be Nashville, Memphis, working with blues musicians and pouring Sotol for the people.
I totally get that. One of the questions, and I know, again, this has been a very, very fun conversation, but it hasn't been as linear as some of my podcasts are, where it's like, okay, tell me your story, how you started, all that. But I am very interested. I know, if you're starting a whiskey company, you are either going to do clear spirits or you're going to source things right away and you're going to kind of do all this other stuff. You don't have to do that with Sotol because you can distill it and go out and sell it that afternoon if you wanted to, right? So what is the process? What is the process of getting a distillery started for Sotol? Explain that to me just a little bit. You have this idea. How do you go out and do it?
Yeah, I mean, because my brand is so focused on having constantly new terroirs, I don't have my own distillery that I built, but I kind of like to see myself as a curator of different distilleries. I go there, I find the people that makes a Sotol batch that I like, and then we start working with them to create a special recipe from their distillery for Cardenche. Something that will have a flavor profile that is unique to our brand, and that comes from the region and the terroir in which the distillery is located. So, it's a very much working hand in hand with each distillery. It's people that have been, there for generations and generations, third, fourth, even fifth generation Sotol producers that, are very much experts in the game. That I've learned a lot from. I had to be in the distillery, work in the distillery, learn the process, learn how to make it before I could even get these distillers to agree to make it for me. I had to get certified. I became a sommelier of Sotol. It's called a sommelier. So, there's a lot of things that went into the process. I really wanted to be very much an expert in the product that I was making because I am trying to perpetrate a very authentic message, a very authentic brand, and that's why even the experiences that I craft are I believe at least, are authentic, because I want Cardenche to be seen as, a very experiential, or better yet, I want the drinkers to have an experiential mindset around drinking Sotol. And yeah,
well,
that's sort of how it.
I'm so thankful that you shared it with me, and I really can't wait to see where the brand goes. You are doing awesome. I'm looking at the bottle here. It is a very unique bottle too. Like there is just, I mean, even that is a work of art in and of itself. Now I only need samples here. But the bottle is gorgeous. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it is indeed a work of art. We worked with an artist that lent inspiration from estridentismo, which is an avant-garde Mexican art movement from the 1920s, just the period when Sotol was at its peak popularity, I guess. And, really the core message behind this movement was to establish a national Mexican identity beyond what was known before. Before Mexico and Mexican art and Mexican culture was seen as like Mayans and sombreros and conquistadores. And in the 1920s, the people, they said, no, that's not who we are. That's what we were. We are a nation of our own that's developing into something modern, and we want to show it through our art. So it's very kind of linear and avant-garde, almost people say Picasso-esque. So we wanted to lend this kind of, lend from this art, estridentismo, and design, and print on the bottle a design that is representative of the terroir. So, each bottle of different terroirs will have, a representation, either the sand, the dunes for the desert, or the mountains for the sierra, but also representing the Cardenche singers, as well as really shining. And as you'll see, the bottle has these very different hues of green between the shading of the actual glass and the printed design, and the label are different hues of green. And we wanted to sort of give this mental connection of I'm about to drink something that's a little bit more vegetal, a little bit more grassy, through the green bottling, as well as, in fact, try to create something that, at least a packaging that people recognize. When I was conceptualizing the bottle together with the artist, we were thinking, Patron. When Patron came out, some people didn't even know what tequila was, and they were drinking it anyway. And they just knew that really cool looking bottle was this very special spirit from Mexico. And eventually they figured out it was tequila after drinking it enough. And that's sort of what we want. We want people to transcend the product, the Sotol, from seeing this iconic bottle and sort of remembering it and be inquisitive of it. Sometimes they're just sitting on the shelf and people say, what's that? And it gives the bartender a chance to, or the store owner a chance to explain, this is, Cardenche, it's a Sotol. And that's a little bit what we wanted to do. And that's also why, as a side note, that's also why we work also with a lot of galleries and artists. We tend to pop up at all the major art fairs. I support a lot of galleries in New York and in Miami. I have in the past, and I currently am doing it just because I think that it is, given the nature of the very kind of avant-garde packaging mixed with the avant-garde spirit, it's something that the art community will be and has been very appreciative of. So that's also one touch point.
No, that's, I mean, I love when a brand just cares enough to, about their marketing, about their packaging. And Zeke always kind of gets on me for this, but it's like, this is your bottle. This is your thing that you're putting out into the world. And the fact that you care so much about it and you've gone into great detail to weave so much stuff together, I think it speaks to who you are. And I like knowing that somebody gave a crap about how they presented something to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to, it's like, yeah, you can put a regular old label on it, slap it for $90. I mean, if something is going to cost $90, I want to know that you have put $90 worth of effort into there before I get it. And I definitely feel like you have. This is a great spirit. I enjoyed both of them. I think I am a Sotol fan now. I'm not even saying, I'm not bullshitting you. I'm not doing all that. Like, this was a very, very fun interview. It was fun for me to learn about a new spirit. Luigi, tell everybody like your website, how people can go find you. Can they order online if it's not in their state yet?
Yeah, definitely. You can order it online on our website, Cardenxe Sotol, and Cardenche, that's with the X, Cardenxe, Sotol.mx. Shop Cardenche, you can find it through our Instagram, through our website. We're going to have some really special merch coming out soon, collaborated with a fashion brand.
I don't doubt that you have tricks up your sleeve.
So we're gonna have those up there soon. But for now, you can go get your bottles online if you're not in your state. You can even subscribe, so you can go online and you could get your monthly Sotol fix. Not even have to think twice about it. Just poof, one click and you get it sent every month. So there's all sorts of ways in which you can get your hands and your everything on it.
Well, Luigi, I think a lot of people buy spirits because they like the person behind the brand. And I know that a lot of people listening are going to like you and they are going to seek out your brand just because you're interesting as hell. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. And I can't wait to see what happens with Cardenche. I can't wait for you to come to Nashville. Thank you again for coming on Dad's Drinking Bourbon.
Thank you for having me.
And y'all can find us on Facebook at Dad's Drinking Bourbon, Twitter, Bourbon Dads, Instagram at Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Please leave us an open, honest review, just like we leave open, honest reviews about the whiskey we drink. Y'all can find us here in Nashville, Tennessee. Cheers.